It's not Monday night, it's Tuesday night, and we are barking. I'm Jake Rowe. He's Jay Roos. This is Bark After Dark, and our always applicable disclaimer here. This is a deeply unserious show, and if you're tuning in for straight Georgia football or Georgia athletics talk, it's not your place tonight. We have got a special guest on tonight, Roos. Why don't you just tell us about it?
Man, a guy with some of the best pipes in the game. I mean, Chuck Oliver has a voice that just, you want him to narrate your life, don't you? I mean,
Yeah.
just follow you around and call it out. But Chuck, a great friend of ours, man, has been kind enough to have, I know, both of us on his show many times. Chuck Oliver, the king of college football. And we got him sitting in the wings. Let's bring him in, brother.
Yeah, you said that about the narrate your life. I can just hear Chuck right now narrating my life and saying between the ages of 32 and 40, he gained 35 pounds. Just I can just hear it right now. What's going on, Chuck? How you doing, buddy?
I appreciate y'all coming on. I got to apologize. We tried to do this about a month and a half ago, and it involved a little technology. And so after figuring out Google Chrome, I'm on with you. So I'm sorry it took so long, but this is good stuff.
Hey, no worries.
I remember that day vividly.
Yes.
Yeah, I remember that day vividly. We were like, hey, do we want to punt the show? And then after talking about it with Palmer for a little bit, we're like, let's just get on and goof off. We'll just get on and do something. Yeah. And actually ended up being a really fun show, if I remember correctly. So we tend to make bad lemonade out of lemons. Nothing better than that, though. So Chuck, as Bruce always says, I'm going to steal this from him. We do such a great job of researching our guests and talking about them that we ask our guests to tell us about themselves. And obviously, you're at 680 The Fan. You've been there for a long time. What's your origin story? How did you get into this business? And because I know you've got a similar story to the one we have.
Yeah. How did I get into this business? Similar to y'all, I was training when I was a fourth grader. I just didn't know it, when it's math class and Miss Rhodes is saying, Chuck, put the magazine away. And you're like, no, Street and Smith is more interesting than this. We were all training for this, weren't we? But we just didn't know. And I couldn't even say, I graduated high school in 1986. Chuck, what do you want to do when you grow up? I want to host sports talk radio. They were like, what is that? I may as well, I want to found Bitcoin. They would have said the same thing. There was no sports talk. So I guess, we were all training for this most of our lives. And so the literal, how did I get into this? I graduated from Central Gwinnett out in Lawrenceville in 86 and went to Auburn and was involved in media and journalism and all that stuff there. And, covered the football team and the press conferences and all that, listened to Pat Dye cough every week in the press conference. And so I got to kind of be around it and I liked it. And I'd always been intrigued by the mental part, really the X's and O's of the game really always intrigued me. And building rosters and what I know how you win, you score more points. What do you do to win? And how I realized later after I graduated from Auburn and started teaching English and coaching football, went out to South Gwinnett, which is, Central Gwinnett's big rival. And people, how can you coach there? I'm like, dude, everybody's got a price. You'd be stunned how low mine was. I am coaching for the rival, okay? And we did that 6 years, and we got to play for a state title, and that was kind of cool. I did not coach David Green, but David Green was a freshman, and he was a quarterback, and I coached D-line, for instance. I'll tell you one thing. And, people say, oh, did you coach David? I was like, no, this is my only interaction with David Green. He was a freshman, and we were running a pass rush drill, and I had him, I said, Steve, hold this shield. Those little padded shields with the straps on the back? Yeah. I was like, Steve, hold this shield. He's like, my name's David. I said, all right, David holds the shield. I don't need to know your name. Just hold the shield. That's my only interaction with David Green. And then he went on to set records and play at Georgia and all that. And so I had a blast teaching and coaching. And I just kind of took a right turn down my writing path and wrote some books and had some freelance clients. And so the end of the story is August of 2000, 790 The Zone, which is not even in business anymore. They had a contest they called Put Up or Shut Up, and they wanted to find Atlanta's most knowledgeable college football fan. And it was supposed to be sort of a gag. They were going to put him on the radio with one of their real broadcasters on Saturdays. And it was just a way to get attention. They were a brand new station, and they were looking for some attention. So I entered the contest and I won, and I can skip a lot of details and say 24 years later, here I am. But I literally walked in off the street, open cattle call. They had a couple of different rounds you went through. And then at the end, there were 3, and then there was 1. And I just kept showing up. And what I learned, by the way, anybody who wants to get into sports talk radio, here's the hack. If you make a PD's life easier, he will have you back. I promise. And so if you're on the air and you're not costing them FCC violations or anything like that, and you do decent enough job, they'll keep having you back. And so what was supposed to be just a gag that lasted during the football season, we plucked a guy off the street, but they just kept scheduling me. And so I kept showing up, and it turned into this.
Oddly enough, Chuck, we've been doing a little bit of that ourselves. We've had a couple guest spots doing the Bill Shanks show, and he keeps having us back. So it seems to be that your theory is correct. That we haven't cost him any money, or we haven't got anybody in trouble. So it looks like that. I think your hack is on point, man.
Yeah, you show a little competence in sports talk, you can work. I promise you.
Bill, the first show we did with the first show we did with Bill was Bill had COVID and was really sick. His producer was really sick. We had a guest producer who was his first time producing. It was our first time doing a radio show. Everything was wrong. I mean, dude, if you want to, I was so exhausted.
We were
after
guessing
those 3 hours.
We were guessing when to come back in. We were just like timing it on a watch, just trying to be like, go now, I guess.
For anybody who hasn't seen behind the scenes, here's the worst feeling in radio, okay? In talk radio, you start a segment, you're about 3 minutes in, you realize you have another 14 minutes, and you've already run through all your material for that segment. And you're looking down, and like you look through the glass, and the engineer's like, I can't help you, dude. We got 14 more minutes. Talk. So and everybody learns that, by the way. The only reason I know that is because I did it a bunch.
It's especially tough when it's your first time doing it, because I'm nervous and I'm talking fast, right?
Absolutely.
And we did that the first time, even with the 2 of us. Like, you could, instead of being 3 minutes in, we were maybe 6 minutes in, but we still had about 8 or 9 minutes left to go. The second time I did it, I was like, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to talk slow. I'm going to give a couple of Jim Rome pauses in there. Okay. just 3 seconds is a lot of time if you can buy it for yourself several times over the course of 15 minutes. But yeah, I honestly, after doing it, I've got a lot of respect for what you and Matt and all of you guys do. Just, I did want to ask you though, that whole thing that you guys have built up there, I've told people this many times. I've been around the, country, and I've listened to kind of these local, local big market shows. I think you guys have one of the most entertaining shows that anybody could possibly listen to. And it's something that Roos and I have, we do this show after a little bit, just kind of being unserious and having fun with it. Was it that way from the beginning when you and Matt and those guys started working together, or did that something you guys had to work into?
No, it's weird because everybody says this. Everyone who makes a comment like that, Jake, it's so nice to hear, for you to say that. But whenever I hear it, there's always a version of y'all have such great chemistry, and it just kind of happens. I mean, it's a hand in a glove, and I've told Matt, I've been very, very transparent. I told him, I was like, I do my 2 hours a day and I roll along, and that's great. I am at my best with you. And Matt said, I'm at my best with you. And Matt's had his own deal. He's been NBC radio. He's done all kinds of stuff. And so when you find somebody, here's the key. And I used to think it was, because a lot of people, would identify, like, exactly what he's about to say, and he knows what you're about to say. And so y'all can play off that. And I was like, that's the first part. I realized when you get that real smooth back and forth, it's that what the other guy's about to say, and exactly how long he's going to take to say it. When you can give the pause, when you can let the zinger sit for a second, when you can jump in at the right moment. Matt and I, that's 24 years. And so the weird thing is we were kind of like that back in 01, 02, 03 as well, when we were doing Southern Comfort back on 790 in the day. So he is an amazing host. I will say that there's no host I've ever worked with or probably even observed like a point guy, where if there's something that's worth mentioning over the rejoin music, like that's literally all it's about. Hawks play the Pacers tonight, 7:30 tip-off. Like all it's worth is a mention. Matt can find like 2.5 minutes that really is interesting and worth talking about. You do that 2 or 3 times throughout a 4-hour show, and you transform the whole feel, the whole hear of the show, because it's like 3 or 4 mini topics that you're like, oh, that's local and it's relevant and it's interesting. And it was just supposed to be a little note. So he's fantastic.
Now, Chuck, I don't know that I knew that you were an English teacher, and I'm very intrigued to hear that. So I was as well. That was what I did before I got into covering recruiting. So I'm curious, what was your what subject were you? Were you American Lit? Were you doing British Lit? What was your specialty when you were back in the day?
What I think the kids really got the most out of was literature in general, the short story, tragedies, whatever we did, and then the writing, because that's my background. I was 16, and here's one thing also, it worked for the radio thing. I've embarrassed myself a couple times, but since I was about 6, I've just walked into places saying, I want to try this. And so when I was 16, I walked into the Gwinnett Daily News, which used to exist out in Lawrenceville, and it was in business for 100 years. New York Times bought it and put it out of business like that. I walked into the Gwinnett Daily News at 16 and said, I want to cover high school sports for you. And they looked at me and they said, okay, we'll try this. And so suddenly I'm going to school in 1984, 85, 86 with like 10s and 20s hanging out of my pocket. I looked like a drug dealer in 1986. I was covering like 8 basketball games a week. I was getting paid. And all it was to tap a few keys. I was like, this is the scam, you know? Yeah. And so writing has always been my background. And when I went to Auburn, it was originally I was a journalism major, and then I switched to English and literature. And so when it comes to reading and then getting to the point and what the writer was really telling us, that was always big in my classroom. And then also writing and expressing yourself, because I've always been able to turn a phrase. And so I wanted to give those 2 things to my students.
Yeah, I was the same way. It's interesting that was kind of it. The only reason I didn't major in journalism is because my parents told me you'll never make any money in journalism, and I've been doing this about 2.5 times as long as I was a teacher. So I think it turned out all right.
Yeah.
Can you take us back to the time? Because this is something I started in education as well, was a football coach. I taught math and was a push-in collaborative special education teacher. Can you take us back to the first day or the days that you realized, okay, I'm not waking up to go to teach anymore. I'm waking up to go do what I've always wanted to do. How big of did that moment ever hit you that you were like, oh man, I'm waking up tomorrow morning to do something different?
I really did have, I want to tell you one of those days, 1993, South Gwinnett. I don't think South had been to the state playoffs since maybe the early 60s. They opened in 56 or 57, maybe. They were named after Bill Haley, Rock Around the Clock, the Comets, Bill Haley and the Comets. They were named after Bill Haley and the Comets. So it's this morning in 1993, and suddenly it's the morning of the state championship game, and we're playing a Dunwoody team that wound up beating us that night 21-7. We could have played them 100 times, and we might have beat them 5. You just shake the tree, and D1 prospects just fell out of their roster. And we were a bunch of kids from the country running the wing tee. And so, y'all know what the wing tee is. 1 yard, 1 yard, 1 yard, 1 yard, 47 yards. And it just never really happened consistently that night. But I remember that morning, the bus was going to leave at like 3 to go over to the stadium. And then we were going to start stretching. And y'all know the routine. 8 a.m., there's already a feel and a buzz around Snellville. Like it was one of those where the morning lasts all day and everybody's already out and you can feel it. Like I looked around and I was like, and I'm on the sidelines for this thing. Like I've got something to do tonight. And this is the biggest night athletically in this town in a couple of decades, maybe. And so it was a really interesting thing. And that's my second year of coaching. So we went and played that night, and the better team won, and that, kind of helps you get through it. But it was just an amazing experience. And for those kids involved now, because that was their school, I was working there. To grow up in a town and you brought a state championship game like to your backyard, that's just something that you can't replace. And so it's been 3 decades, and I'm sure those kids, that's just still a wonderful. So for me as a coach, as a new coach, that was just a tremendous thing.
Sure. No, absolutely. I'm curious, Chuck. You have a bunch of guys on. You run the gamut from recruiting to the top of the top when it comes to the world of college football. But looking back over the course of your career, are there some people that really kind of stand out to you as like, wow, that was a pretty cool experience to be able to just sit down, talk with that guy, even if it was just once?
Yeah, there's a few of those. You have to be a man of a certain age, and if you don't, go Wikipedia your computer. There's a guy named Jim Craig, who, when I was a sixth grader, he was the goalie for the U.S. men's Olympic team. This was February 1980, Lake Placid, and they beat the Russians or Soviet Union, and then they won the gold medal game. And this is a weird time. Like, interest rates were 18.5% on your mortgage. Okay. People were using our embassies as target practice, and the president responded by punishing American athletes and farmers. We're not going to the Olympics, and we're not going to sell you any wheat. So against that backdrop, Jim Craig, he basically became an inspiration for the whole country. I talked to him 20 years later, and I realized I didn't have anything relevant really to say to him. Now, we talked and we had a good interview, but I was like, he still didn't realize when he came along, the mood of the country and what he did between the pipes for the American team. It was a transformational thing. It was the Al Michaels, "Do You Believe in Miracles" call. Hank Aaron, I sat down and realized, what relevant am I going to say to Hank Aaron? Now, on a totally different thing, I want to tell you about the first time I talked to Steve Spurrier. He's at South Carolina, and it's his first year, and the Georgia game's coming up. And y'all know what you do. You just try to get a soundbite to play for your audience back home. So I'm in Columbia, and everybody asks their questions, and then I'm just the guy who's never, like, everybody else is there every day. I hold out the microphone, and I'm saying, hey, you're playing Georgia on Saturday. What makes Mark Richt's offense such a challenge? And I'm expecting him to give me a good soundbite about DJ Shockley that I can play back in Atlanta. Instead, he looks at me and he says, "Not my job to pump up Mark Richt's offense. You go talk to him about that." And I was like, okay, so this guy doesn't play the game. Like, he wants you to ask real questions. And so I learned it. He bit me on the nose a little bit, and I learned that's just Spurrier. He's like, I'm not going to hype somebody else. When Spurrier was a player, he was the best player. When he was a coach, he was the best coach. He's a guy that I have had hard times coming up with relevant, important questions to ask. So there are a few guys that, for whatever reason, they jump in my brain that way, and it's been an interesting existence when that happens.
No doubt. All right, Chuck. We're running out of time here, so we each have a question that we ask every single guest that we talk to, and mine. We'll go with mine first because mine's not exactly uplifting. We talked about your narration thing a minute ago, so this may come easy to you. Let's imagine that you get a chance to send yourself out. You've passed away, and you get to organize exactly how things go. Who's eulogizing you? It could be anybody, dead or alive, no matter the genre.
Musician.
Doesn't even have to be a celebrity. Who's eulogizing you?
I hope honestly, I don't mean to get out of it. This is going to be, you're right, it's a heavy question. Someone that just would say I was kind. And I want to tell you, because like the amount of blessings that literally God has peeled off the roof of my house and just poured stuff into it. Okay. The last thing I want is what I deserve. Okay. And so I have tried to pass those along, and, we're not supposed to be a blessing black hole where it all just kind of, and you, hey, look at how things are great for me. And so honestly, I'm going to pick somebody. I've got actually a friend of mine, a guy named Ken Johnson. He was the principal at Archer High School until about 2 years ago. He'd been at Berkmar before that. I walked into first grade. True story. I walk in Dyer Elementary in Lawrenceville, 1975. Teacher says, "What's your name?" I said, "Chuck Oliver." He's like, "All right, well, this is the empty seat. You sit across from Ken Johnson." Been my best friend since the first day I walked into first grade, and I still know him all these years later. Ken could give a pretty good reflection of me, and I hope that he would say that, as things went along, Chuck got really kind with all his blessings.
I like that. That's a great answer.
I feel like anybody that's known me that long would have some bad things to say.
And I would also, like Steve Spurrier would say, he needs to ask better questions. But, if we're going to go another way, so that's it.
All right. So, Chuck, my question for everybody, you're a well-traveled guy. You've been in media long enough. You've had to stay in plenty of hotels. What is the worst hotel room that Chuck Oliver has ever stayed in?
Scottish Inn, Tuscaloosa, Alabama. $32 a night. There was a blood stain on the box spring. Matt Chernoff and I, we were there for the the Iron Bowl. I want to say that would have been so 2002. We were in Tuscaloosa for the Iron Bowl, and we were staying a couple of nights, and it was either the Scottish Inn or the Masters Inn right there on McFarland. And it was not such a super duper experience that night.
I think you are the third person in the history of this show that has brought up a hotel in the town of Tuscaloosa, Alabama.
Yes.
Yeah, they kind of know they got you. You're a captive crowd. By the way, can I throw a shout out to a lot of our media brethren who we're not going to see in Dallas? And I want to explain why. When it's in Birmingham, when it's in Nashville, Atlanta, like almost everybody can drive. If you are in the media and you have sponsors and a budget and all it takes for you to go to media days is somebody approving it, yay. Most people got to hustle up sponsors. They got to get a car from the dealership to drive. They got to do all these things to fund their trip. And Dallas is just too much. There are a lot of folks who are not going to be able to make it to Dallas because literally they're almost independent contractors where they're 3 or 4 hours on the radio every day. And it's going to be an eye-opening experience, I think, for the SEC because it's just so expensive for so many guys to get out there, ladies that are kind of funding their own deal. So
yeah,
no
doubt.
I'm actually not going this year for the first time. So just not because we can't do it. It's just because it just doesn't make any sense. You know,
the logistics.
We'll send one. We won't send two.
No, and I've said I was so wrong about this. When it was in Hoover all those years, I would think it took the SEC championship game 2 years to figure out they outgrew Birmingham. Get this thing out of Hoover. Hoover does it better. The circus, the
100%
carnival in the lobby. I like the feel, man. And so I missed that. I had a very efficient, well-run Nashville and Atlanta experience. Hoover's better.
It is. Hoover's the best. Hoover is the best, 100%.
Well, Chuck, you said that you hope people would say that you're kind. I would certainly say that, man. You've been very kind to both Jake and I. You've been very kind to have us on your show and to come on our show. So we really appreciate it, man.
Well, I appreciate the invite. Y'all do a tremendous job, and I say it whenever you're on. I was like, if you're a UGA fan or a fan of somebody who plays them, you want to listen to these guys. So I appreciate y'all having me on, man.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Chuck.
Yeah, I hope we can do it again.
Good interview, man. I got to say, between him and our man Chuck Dowdle, there must be something about the name Chuck that makes you such a great storyteller because he told some great ones, dude. Those were so fun.
Chuck Roos also.
You got Chuck Roos, yeah, that's right.
There's something to the Chucks, man. I don't know.
Absolutely. So, hey, I didn't get a chance to ask you between the time lapse between last week's show and this week's show, what you been up to?
You know, man, not a lot. The 4th of July week was slammed. It was crazy, man. Up here, especially, North Georgia, Southeast Tennessee, wherever you like to be in this area. People just flood this area for this stuff, man. They go crazy for it. So, there's a lot of lakes and stuff up here. So just a ton of tourists in town. You got to kind of lay low. It's one of those times we kind of laugh about it. And it reminds me of, back when I was in Athens, there were certain times you just knew not to get out. Like you might go to Twilight, but if you weren't trying to go to Twilight, you knew just not to leave your house,
Yeah.
If AthFest was going on and you weren't going to the shows, you're just going to maybe go hang in Normal Town or maybe just, cook at the house.
A non-football fan may say the same thing about a half dozen Saturdays in the fall.
Right. Absolutely. Exactly.
I used to work, you used to work with some of them. You used to work with some teachers that really didn't care about it. And they would be like, yeah, from Friday to Sunday, I am in my house this weekend. I'm not dealing with that.
Yeah. And that's what it's like up here, for big holidays, especially the summer holidays. Memorial Day is like that. 4th of July is like that. Labor Day is like that. We all kind of just refer to it as amateur hour because, there's going to be roadblocks, there's going to be drunk people on the road, there's going to be just a wait wherever you're trying to go eat. So it's a mess. I'm glad to be through it. Don't get me wrong. It was fun. But it's always nice when it calms down a little bit.
I've got some breaking news here real quick. I just hit Chuck up to tell him how much we appreciate it and tell him thanks for coming on. Chuck's response, word up. What a response. I love it so much.
I would have. I couldn't. I did not have that one on my bingo sheet, buddy. I didn't.
Word up. Love it. Absolutely. I wanted to say it like it's word up.
It looked like you had. It looked like you had a pretty nice spread for.
I've got all my little sausage fingers. I lit off some fireworks, and I got all my little sausage fingers. So I'm excited about that. I didn't lose a hand this year. None of my kids got hurt at the fireworks celebration. We go over into Oconee County to Brookhaven, the neighborhood there. We have some friends who live in there, and they set off some fireworks. Minus Todd Hartley now. Todd Hartley no longer lives in that neighborhood. He used to come and hang out with us there, but no Coach Hartley there this year. But yeah, that's about. I mean, doing that, raising kids, going to the pool. We got some rain last night, which is awesome. It's the first time I believe in forever we've gotten more than a couple dozen drops. Former neighbors in our old neighborhood came over. We did about 4 pounds of king crab legs that were absolutely delicious. Cooked them 3 different ways, and we all kind of had our way that we liked them.
You back a pretty penny too, man. I know king crab legs.
Actually, my old neighbor bought them. He picked them up from Sam's and kind of got a good deal on them. They were like half price a couple weeks ago, and he kept them and held on to them. So we did like a low country boil on some crab legs, and that was a lot of fun. Hey, listen, we got to get to this though, because I've been excited about this one because I'm really, I'm going to kind of, without the amount of preparation for a graphic, I'm going to kind of turn the worm on you with rankings, but not necessarily asking you to rank them. I just want you to talk about something as we jake off, as everything kind of gets quiet and you get some alone
back to back. You don't have to look each other in the eye. And then
that's right. Exactly. I've got to, so I was thinking about this the other day, and I should have given you a little bit of warning because this is nebulous, right?
Okay.
I mean, nebulous. Favorite Southern sayings, favorite little Southern tropes and anecdotes. What are your like
one? Okay, I'll tell you one that I always a few things that I get down with that I think are decidedly Southern. One of them is what do you say when it's raining but the sun is out?
Yeah, that's Devil's beating his wife.
Me too. And I've said that in front of so many people, and they're like, "What the hell are you talking about? What does that mean?" And I'm like, "I don't know, man. That's just what I was always told." Can
I give you a little bit of advice? If you're ever in the car with children, with small children, don't say that because it invites a lot of questions.
I would assume
who's the devil? I didn't know he was married. Who's he married to? Why is he beating on her? You know, right. You talk about nebulous. You get yourself into a game of 175 questions pretty quick.
Sure. That's one that really stands out to me as like deeply Southern. Something that I grew up hearing my whole life. I still say it to this day. I didn't realize that people didn't say it until I was probably like 20, like I was at college one time and said it, and somebody was like, "What the hell does that mean?" I guess they don't do that down in Central Gwinnett, down there where Chuck's from. But another one that I grew up with, and I don't know if it's Southern necessarily or if it's just like an older people thing, but not closing another man's knife. That was something that I grew up and I still practice to this day. I refuse to do it. I think of it as like ultimate bad luck. I'd rather throw the damn thing away than close another man's knife. I won't do that. There's
I've actually got a little bit of something on that. So my dad worked in construction. He had 2 partners. They were brothers, Donnie and Keith Guest. Donnie's passed away now. I miss him every single day. I think about him all the time. He was older than my dad, and was one of my best friends. Like he was, one of my biggest fans and best friends. I would be working helping my dad during the summers, and I would borrow one of their knives to cut something, just to cut a piece of twine or something. We'd have a bundle of like spindles or 1-bys or something like that I would need to cut. And I'd borrow theirs to do it, and I'd hand it back to them open, and they wouldn't say a word to me. I would just find that knife later on, just still open somewhere. Yes. They would just lay it down open.
Yeah.
And, then I finally I was like, "What's going on here?" And they're like, "You're going to have to close that knife. I'm not closing it." So that's a good one. Not necessarily that it's a saying, but it's
just like a practice, right?
I'll allow it.
Yeah. We played a game called Mumbly Peg when I was a kid. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It was basically like you took a knife and you had to do like little tricks with it. That was something that I know not everybody grew up doing. The story, this one is a very interesting one because it's like it took me years to realize where it was coming from. But the like boogeyman figure of our childhood was Raw-Headed Bloody Bones. And
I've never heard of that.
Now it's a very, so it took me years to figure out what the hell that was. I was like, I just thought it was, just some scary monster that lurked in the dark. It's actually like a centuries old horror story that they would tell kids back in like old England and old Scotland. So this thing is like been passed down so far in the generations. And I think that that's really neat. I think it's cool. I don't know that if I had kids, I would be talking about Raw-Headed Bloody Bones. I mean, that seems terrifying now that I'm older, but it's that was something I guess that I grew up with. Things like, man, I ain't seen you in a coon's age, or A Month of Sundays. I like all those. Those are good ones. That's an interesting question. I'll have to think on. I'm sure I'll think of some like over the course of the day that I didn't include, but
maybe we should maybe we throw in a quick segment in future shows and we just say, hey,
I like that.
Southern saying, what you got this week?
I like that. I like that.
For the first time in a long time the other day, I used Lord Willing the Creek Don't Rise.
Oh, that's a good one.
I used that one the other day. Obviously, there's Bless His Heart.
Sure.
You use that one, a version of that one today in our group text with DawgsHQ about a certain young man. But so, yeah, I mean, there's just so many. There's so many of them. I got
one for you. This goes back to the like not close the knife thing. When it was storming at your house, would your family insist that you get out of the shower and also unplug the telephone?
Out of the shower, they didn't like us being in the shower. They're like, hey, you need to get out of there pretty quick. It's coming a storm. Yeah.
Has that ever
what did they call it? No, I don't care. I've thrown caution into the wind. I may not be long for this world.
Sure.
What did you guys call an absolute deluge? What did you guys? What was it called? Did y'all have any Southern names?
I mean, I've heard Toad Strangler.
Toad Frog Strangler. Yeah,
I love that one.
A Gully Washer.
Gully Washer.
Gully Washer.
Yeah. No, those
training like a cow peeing on a flat rock.
Okay. Yeah. Sure.
My dad is the king of those like similes. His favorite one is when he's talking about somebody that's a little bit wild or unreasonable. He says he's crazier than a sprayed roach.
I like that one.
Yeah, he uses that one a lot. He'd come up with some stuff that's slicker than a soap maker's palette. He'll say,
this one's not very Southern, but it's one my dad says, and I picked it up over the years, is like drunker than 9 rats. Yeah. And I don't know what that means even, but I love that saying. And
apparently when the rats get together, they
my dad is definitely not Southern. So but I do love that one.
Yeah. Love Southern sayings. We'll have to revisit that in the future.
That's a good one. That's a good question. And I'm surprised actually that I was able to come up with that many off the top of my head. But man, that stuff's ingrained in you. I mean, that's the stuff back in the files for sure.
And they come and it comes back up like I can't think of the word. Is it like herpes? Like it's a disease, like it's a virus that's in you.
It lies dormant. Yeah,
it lies dormant in you. And then just sometimes it just flies right out, and you're like, God, where'd that come from? I hadn't said or heard that in 2 years, 3 years.
It's one of those things too. Now I've gotten to the point where when that does happen, because I know exactly what you mean, and it will pop up on me like that. That like I'm like, what? Like I dive into it, like the etymology. Like, what does this mean? Where did this come from? Why do people say this? Like, where did all of this start? Stuff like that's really interesting. And what's interesting to me too is. And I don't tell a lot of people this, so take it as a compliment for sure. A lot of people, I don't think that a lot of people I hope, or I guess I should say, I hope people are passing that down to their kids, and I'm glad. I know you are, because I feel like we're losing a dialect almost. There's a lot of people that suggest, especially like the Appalachian dialect is really dying out pretty heavily. But I think that it's cool to keep those phrases alive and stuff like that. I think that's important, man. It's part of the culture.
Absolutely.
So my question for you is pretty simple, because actually I had a discussion with a few people about this past week, and I was just kind of curious as to where you fell on the subject. 4th of July, obviously just here past us, and I know you went out and shot some fireworks. Look, I know the kids love fireworks, and I know that that's a big part of it, but how do you feel about fireworks? Because I got to tell you, man, in my older age, I don't know, it doesn't do what it used to do for me,
All right. So, and the reason I'm going to dig into you for a second. The reason it is because you don't have kids.
Right. I know. I get that.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, my kids don't even really love them. Like, my kids aren't like crazy about them. They don't anticipate them. They're not like, oh, fireworks, let's go. It's not like that. But when they're going off, they tend to kind of be oohing and ahhing, which is fun. I like them. It's funny. I've kind of had like a little bit of a transformation over time. Like, there was a time in my life where I would be like, I would light a Roman candle and hold it, and just,
sure. Oh yeah, absolutely.
No chance of that happening. I have become the biggest, scaredy cat the older I get. I just get scared of things. Like, when we go do this thing, there are a bunch of dads that they're out there setting up the fireworks. They're throwing them in canisters and lighting the fuses and lighting up the big boxes that have weird names. Like, I don't want to get into some of the weird names that are on these boxes.
The Destroyer, the world ender, and the death dealer.
Stuff like exactly, stuff like that. But so I just sit there, and my duty has been to I just work the water hose. Like, hey, when you're done with that box, come throw it down at my feet, and I'll rinse it down real quick for you, and make sure we don't get a fire like my man Chris Irvin and I did up in North Carolina a few years ago when we lit up some fireworks, and then we were at his house, and I go walking out the front door to get to the car, and I smell just reeking, burning plastic, and we had thrown the fireworks away a little too soon, and his trash can had caught on fire and had melted one of those big industrial size, or those big, one of the big cans everybody pulls out the curb. Those things are like 4 foot tall. It was down to about 1 foot tall. It was just above the wheels by the time it had stopped. Flame was, chemicals everywhere, but I like them. Okay. The thing I become more in awe of as I get older is just how powerful they are.
Sure.
Like, especially if you get a bunch of them a bunch of the mortars that you put in the canisters, man, those things fire all.
Like in high school, like early college, there was a fireworks store in Copper Hill. So used to, back in the day, I'm sure you remember this, you couldn't buy fireworks in Georgia.
Right.
And so, but where we lived, where I grew up, we were right on the Tennessee line. So everybody would flood to Tennessee and they would put these little shacks like right on the Tennessee line. And there's no telling how much money those guys were making back in the day, but people would come from all around to come to these fireworks stores over here in Copper Hill. And I remember though that like I said, late high school, early college, our buddy Noah went into one of them, and he cut a deal with the guy to buy every single mortar shell that he had. So he came out with like 500 mortars, and we had them for years. And we built PVC pipes and had caps on the ends, and we drilled a hole and you could light it, and we would just take them and shoot them like bazookas. And just and we did that. That was just like an activity. We would go to the mountains, and we would find like a ridge or a big long kind of precipice, and we would just shoot mortar rounds off of it, like for an evening. That was our activity. So, back then I was still real into it. What made me think of it though, I was talking to a guy, and he said, man, I'm kind of just over it. He said, my brother-in-law came over. He said, man, I got $2,800 worth of fireworks. He said, after 15 minutes, he was just standing next to me because he'd shot all of the stuff. I said, it is a very real way to light money on fire.
It is 100%. And I gotta say, and this is probably this might put my invite to the annual Brookhaven deal in jeopardy. I hope not, but I'm probably never gonna buy fireworks. I'm probably never gonna actually purchase them.
You're just gonna bum off of other people's fireworks.
I mean, if I'm gonna get invited, that's fine. I'm never gonna be the one to buy them and set them off. There's too many places to find them.
Sure.
I mean, we can go do the downtown Jefferson thing, which, dude, you want to see a melting pot of people just having fun. Go to the downtown Jefferson fireworks. Usually they do it like on the 2nd or the 3rd. They do it before. Man, it is everything from folks making, it is everything from folks needing social assistance to folks needing, from folks living in, $3 million homes, and we're all together, brother. There's pickup basketball, there's Coleman road trip grills and chili cook-offs in the summer. I don't know how, but I mean, it is wild. It is one of the most incredible things I've ever seen.
One of the things too that blows my mind about fireworks is these gigantic fireworks superstores, right? That are, like people built them years ago, but they're still open daily.
Yeah.
Who the hell's buying these fireworks in like mid-November? Or
I don't know. I think we might have like a modern day layaway program. Like, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to spend $28 today and buy this little bad boy right here. And then I'm going to hold on to it until 4th of July. And then you just build up your arsenal as the year goes along. It's the only thing I can think of.
I think they're drug fronts.
Yeah. Just like Mattress Firm.
Yes. Mattress Firm is also a drug front. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Well, Jake's Fireworks is controlled by the cartel. There's a Jake's Fireworks in Athens, and every time we ride by it, I'm like, guys, listen, when y'all get old enough, I'm gonna get you guys a job at my fireworks place. And they're like, you don't own that, and I'm over there like trying to convince them that I do. It's funny stuff. It's kind of stuff I got from my dad. So, but yeah, I mean, I enjoy them. I really just enjoy like the get together of the fireworks. I love it when people get together.
Sure.
Even large groups, I can people watch. Even though I get more and more, nervous.
Yeah, I'm cool with that. And it's neat to see like like my little town come together and everybody come out. And like you said, people from all walks of life just kind of get to sit around and enjoy a thing together. I think that is cool. And it is nice to see people getting together for whatever reason. So
always better when there's water. There's always better if you're watching fireworks at the lake or you're sitting on the beach and you're able to watch fireworks. That always better. It's always a better experience. I don't know why.
I'm going to disagree, man. Our show down here in McKaysville, Georgia, we one of the great things that happens almost every year, didn't this year because it rained, but they almost always set the hill on fire where they're shooting the fireworks from, and it's always great to watch. It's always a fun.
Well, I'm not saying. I'm just saying. I'm sitting by the water watching.
Right,
them.
I understand.
I don't think anybody's shooting them out over the water because of the debris that gets in there. That's another thing that happens whenever you shoot them out in the neighborhood. Is it does rain hot fire a little bit.
Sure.
Things kind of jump off on you a little bit. They're a little unpredictable, not professional. I will say that I have a lot of respect and awe for like professional pyrotechnicians.
Yes.
I've always fancied myself as one just for fires, not explosives.
Sure.
I'm very good with the fire. I can start one fast. I can contain one. But I've been a pyromaniac since a small child, but
I love it.
We all love fire. All right. Maybe we'll have some fire for you on the next edition of Bark After Dark. We'll be back to Mondays starting next week. Don't know who we're going to have on as a guest. We may not have any. I may just come on here and I may just kick Roos out and, or he may just kick me out. We'll just get on here and just start talking, saying Southern sayings over and over again.
Yeah.
Who knows? You never know what's going to happen with us. But for this one, y'all have a good week. We love you.